We own and operate assets, about 75,000 miles of pipelines and 180-plus terminals around North America. These assets produce large amounts of cash flow, and our primary goal is to grow that cash flow and distribute it to our unit holders at KMP and EPB and to our shareholders at KMI. Another very strange hookup to this whole thing is the reversal of Cochin, which is actually in the end, we believe, going to be used to move diluent processed out of the condensate coming out of the Eagle Ford and moved all the way back up into Alberta. Again, we've made no secret of the fact that the great upside there is not California demand, but the ability to drop off volumes along the way, particularly into Mexico. And we talk about the Sasabe project, which is a $200 million plus project, which would hook into additional volumes that would be picked up on a brand new pipeline being built by other parties down in Mexico. We would hook up at the border near Sasabe, Arizona. So just a lot of potential to drop more volumes off. And when you do that, we believe we will end up with more than one lateral going down there. And when that happens, you have two things. You earn on the money you've spent on those laterals, plus you are filling some of the capacity that is now not being utilized to ship gas to California. The other thing is that we continue to look at the potential to use portions of that system to convert it to other uses, perhaps moving crude oil west from the Permian Basin.
I'm wondering, in terms of after the El Paso acquisition, some of the assets you acquired are including Elba Island and the Gulf LNG facility. I'm wondering, given the significant interest in terms of potential liquefaction and export of natural gas and some of the controversies around that, can you talk a little bit about how you're viewing those assets in terms of their potential for you over the next few years and maybe some of the competitive advantages or challenges those facilities or those sites may have compared to some of the other players who have already got agreements or have been working fairly aggressively in the queue at FERC?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. We believe that both of those terminals have very great potential to be utilized for LNG export. In both cases, we have a DOE approval on the FTA volumes. No one knows for sure what's going to happen on the non-FTA. We believe we will be able to put together a project at Elba that will be non-FTA, and then it will have some optionality to expand if and when we got FTA. On the Gulf, we think much the same thing. We think we will be able to do something, although it's a little more preliminary than our efforts on Elba. We think there's a good chance we can do something there that, again, would have maybe one train on an FTA, and then we'd have to wait to get larger to see whether we got approval from DOE on a non-FTA. Our whole process in this is very conservative, I think. We don't want to spend a lot of money cranking up based on getting non-FTA approval, so we're working very hard to secure commitments that are binding even without non-FTA approval. And so the whole projects would be constructed that way. And if you get non-FTA approval, there'd be upside. But we want base projects that will stand on their own based on FTA, which we have in both instances. So we think both of them have potential. We're not prepared to announce anything right now, but we think we will be prepared to give more detail on that in the not-too-distant future.
Hi.
Hi, how are you, Craig?
Great, thanks. So quick follow-up first on Vidula's question. I think you said, Rich, that you were thinking maybe you could do a half BCF a day single train at Gulf and LNG with FTA binding commitments. What were you thinking about size and potential online date for Elba?
Well, first of all, I don't think I said, I think I just said an LNG train. I didn't mention the specific amount of gas throughput there, but we think that the potential at Gulf is to put together one train of FTA. At Elba, Tom, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at potentially somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 to 400,000 a day, and in the 2015-2016 timeframe.
I'm really interested about this comment you made about converting EPNG from gas to crude. And maybe you can just talk a little bit more about how much oil might be able to move out of the Permian. Would you be moving, just converting a portion of the EPNG or the whole thing? Talk about maybe how much capital it would take to do that.
Well, first of all, I want to emphasize again, this is very early. I was responding to a question of what are the upside opportunities on EPNG. It's very early in the game, but we would not be converting all of it. We would still, if we did it at all, be able to service all of our gas customers at the present level of demand or whatever throughput they want to sign up for, a level of throughput they want to sign up for, and still convert. We have multiple lines across there, and still convert a line all the way from the Permian into Southern California. The volumes could be very substantial, maybe 300,000 or 400,000 barrels a day, and the effort to, or the opportunity to deploy capital could be up to around $2 billion on that. I know I've said it till I'm blue in the face, and you guys are probably tired of hearing it, but you cannot overemphasize the power of the footprint that we now have in North America. And we are going to drive that footprint as hard as we possibly can, only when the projects make sense on an economic basis. But we're going to take advantage of that footprint to continue to get additional projects in the front door.